this is English 1, Socratic Discussion. Our first prompt is, what do you feel is the most significant and helpful information you learned in the metacognitive portion of our first unit? Connor, what do you think?
Well, the most important thing that I probably learned throughout this metacognition unit was that knowing how you think helps you learn better throughout, like when you're like taking notes and stuff.
Any evidence?
In one of the videos, the specialist had said that the learning the way you think will help you learn with better study habits. And also said, the more sleep you get, the better your brain will work. Charlie, got anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay, I think that the most significant information I learned would to get the most amount of sleep to have a successful and productive day, because sleep can affect you physically and mentally. And I got most of my evidence from the article, The Importance of Sleep for Teen Mental Health, and also personal experience, such as not getting enough sleep and being affected physically and mentally, the struggles I went through at school. And some factual evidence I got was 41 Americans get 6 or fewer hours of sleep per night. Haley, what do you think?
I said that the most helpful article for me was Everything You Know About Sleep is Wrong, because I never knew that getting less sleep would increase your chances of getting Alzheimer's.
Heidi, do you have anything to add?
I read that in a study of nearly 28,000 high school students, scientists found that each hour of sleep lost was associated with a 38% increase in the risk of feeling hopeless or sad.
Why do you think that?
I agree with that because when I don't get enough sleep, I feel not as energized or motivated to get things done.
Lucas?
I agree with Seth on what he said because I can relate to that.
How have you related to that before?
Gilbert, do you have anything to add?
I agree with what you said, because if you don't get enough sleep, then you don't do as good on quizzes.
Brad, you have anything to add?
If you don't get enough sleep, then, if you don't get enough sleep like monthly or like in long periods of time, then you have a higher chance of getting into like bad things like drugs and alcohol.
I agree. Shall we move on to our next prompt? Yes. Next prompt is, what learning and or reading strategies did you find most helpful? Cooper, what do you think?
I tend to learn when I am by myself in a room that is quiet with no distractions. That way I can focus on what I'm doing.
I agree with that idea.
It
makes it a lot
I agree
easier
as
to
well.
study.
Yeah. You have any evidence?
No.
Okay. Well, I think the visualization strategy is the most helpful because I need to be able to see something before I do it. My evidence is from the article, listing note-taking strategies. As an example, I use when I'm working for my grandpa at his service shop, seeing him do something and explaining it at the same time is more beneficial for me rather than him just explaining it without me seeing it.
I agree with the visual learning idea
Why do you say that?
because I am the same way. I have to learn visually.
Haley?
Well, for me, when I'm studying or doing homework, I tend to listen to jazz because it helps me concentrate. And then I use the 6 C's of self-learning because a lot of our stuff is digital.
Charlie? I'll call that. Heidi?
I agree with your idea because when somebody just tries to explain something to me, it's hard for me to realize what they're trying to say, but once they show it to me, then I understand it better.
Lucas?
It's like learning how to drive a stick. You can't do it when someone just explains it to you, but when they show it to you how to do it, it's easier.
I disagree. I learned to do it by myself.
Anybody else opposed?
What in the text made you think?
There wasn't any of that stuff. I learned to do it myself on my own.
Shall we move on to our next prompt?
Yes.
What do you feel is the most significant and helpful information you learned in the communication portion of our first unit? Haley.
I learned that nonverbal and verbal communication was most important because 63% of communication is just off your body language, and when you're talking, you don't really notice it. But then as you get talking in groups like this, you kind of notice body language.
Do we all agree?
Yes.
Okay. I said the most important thing I took away from the communication portion would be making eye contact and being still and listening attentively. Because having a phone affects your communication, because when you're bored, you tend to turn to your phone to relieve your boredom. And I usually have a hard time focusing on the person talking because I get easily distracted and I often daydream. Anyone else?
Charlie,
No comment.
do you have anything to add, bro?
Everything to add, Carl?
I get really distracted easily when I'm on the phone team. Brad?
No, I do not.
I agree with what you said.
Let's go to what is something you've learned about yourself as a learner through this unit? Connor?
I've learned that I should do things in the morning because then that's when I'm the most active and I'm more awake in the morning. And then if I do stuff after like a school day, I'm more tired and not as willing to do stuff.
And I learned how to speak in front of some people.
Haley?
I learned that I tend to get distracted towards the end of the day, like in fourth and fifth block, and that I'm most active in the early morning around 6.
I'm going to have to wrap you up. You're doing so well. I'm so sad that we have to compress this. Outside circle, what are some really good things that the inside circle did before we switch quickly?
Making sure everyone spoke.
Yes.
Everyone spoke and that they know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Did a nice job of including others, making sure that everyone got their voice heard. Very good. Okay, very quickly and quietly switch. And I will give everyone passes to their next class. So everyone, when you hear the bell, if you even hear the bell, continue until we get absolutely wrapped up. Thank you. 6 more minutes.
I'm not in charge.
Why did you get out of
You are correct.
What? We get out of this.
You're so okay. We have. We'll do
What
our
ones do
full
we do?
7 minutes then. You're right. I'm so stressed at trying to get us all
I
done.
was gonna say 6 more minutes. Wait, class.
Okay. Thank you.
Wait, what?
Charlie, wait to be interrupted throughout this.
Yeah, nice job.
Wait, what ones do we do? The last two?
Okay. Good question.
No comment.
Is this
No
a new?
comment.
Is this a new conversation?
Yes.
So you can start over again. Can you connect to things that you just heard though?
No. Yes.
Yes. Because even though this is its own little conversation going on here, everything that's happening in our class is what we're learning from. So we can definitely connect to the first conversation. All right. Yes. Okay. Be with you in just a second.
Seth,
Okay.
what's your display? What's all that stuff?
Are we ready?
How do we start it?
Seth, what's your display?
You may begin.
Good to back chain.
What was the most helpful information you guys learned?
The note taking.
So I think the most helpful thing that we learned in this unit is how to listen and to show that you're listening so that other people know you're listening.
I agree. What part of the text made you think that?
self-taught by Miss Hartwig.
I disagree with this because I feel like learning about our sleep is more important. As the article said, there are 63% of people who don't get enough sleep, and that decreases productivity. And as teenagers, I feel like we should get more sleep.
I agree. However, I get a lot of sleep, but
Well, I kind of agree with that, but I also disagree because I thought like the stress unit was the most helpful because like it shows signs of stress and like what causes stress and like how it affects your sleeping and learning habits.
So you're saying that if I get more sleep, I'll have less stress.
Not necessarily.
I do not agree with this
Why is that?
Why is that?
because whenever I sleep, it removes all of my pain. All the pain goes away when I go to sleep.
I agree. It does.
What,
At least for a little bit.
what do you feel like is the most significant and helpful information? Oh, no, that's your thing. Go ahead, Joe.
What learning strategies did you guys think were most helpful?
Visualization, because when I see things, I think I become smarter, and I learn better when I see things rather than
In a book.
exactly.
See,
I
I
agree.
understand what you're saying, but I need you to explain a little more.
Okay, so whenever I see things, I learn better, but whenever I don't see things, I cannot learn.
You
I
just said
feel like
that.
if I read it with my eyes, I learn better instead of just listening to it.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but can you elaborate on that, please?
Okay, so like if you're reading a sentence or like a paragraph, you read it with your eyes instead of having someone read it to you, and then you're looking at something else.
That is an interesting
Completely
idea.
focused.
Yeah, but you can visualize it.
Honestly, I'd agree with that one, just because it's like, I get what you mean. You're like, you'd rather have yourself go in and figure out what it is rather than just have someone talk at you.
Faith, do you agree with this?
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Makes more sense that if you look at something with your own eyes, it'll make more sense to yourself.
Get a picture in your head.
Is there something that made you think that? Nope.
This one.
What do you guys feel is most significant and helpful information in the first communication part?
I thought the body language part was like the most
The way you
significant
Show your expression.
because it's like more used now than it was ever before because a lot of people are passive aggressive now and like you have to just be able to tell what they're thinking just by the way they're
Body
moving.
What do you mean by that?
Well, let's see. You, as for example.
That makes absolutely no sense, and I would like you
Could
to
you elaborate
elaborate.
on that? That didn't really give us a clear description of what you were trying to get at.
Okay. For example, Hogan's pretending to care but not actually caring, and you can tell that by the way he's acting.
She's got a good point.
I care a lot about this. I'd like to clarify that. And I don't think she cares about this. I think
I think
that
like
she
acting.
doesn't actually care about this, and she should be polite to people.
I think something that's really important with the communication is the different forms of communication and knowing the different forms of communication. And things that go into it, such as tone. Kenzie sounded a bit irritated. Don't know why.
And by her
But it
facial
was there.
expression.
Yes.
I agree with Brendan's idea because I feel like in all of the new things, like we learned about the 4 differences in speaking, region, culture, slang, and technical terms, and it just all depends on how you're talking.
I hadn't thought of that before.
And that was a lot about body language when your face shows more of what you're saying. Or when you're saying stuff and your face changes this section.
Another important part about the communication section was the things like the encoding and the interference and the things that could affect your personal communication with other people.
I agree with that.
Okay, good point.
That makes sense.
What's something you learned about yourself as a learner through this game?
I learned that I like to talk and not so much of a listener
That is true.
because I don't really understand other people.
That's interesting.
I only understand myself.
Do you have anything to add to that, Bob?
No, not at all.
Austin, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Hogan, can you clarify that?
I don't understand what other people are trying to say. I just understand what I'm saying.
Why is that? Why?
So you're saying
why?
that you kind of have to have them explain it to you a little more, whereas if it's you, you can say something that wouldn't quite make sense to somebody else, but you know what it means.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Keaton, what do you think about that?
I agree with Hogan. It's hard to listen when there's like distractions and your brain doesn't process it the same way.
What can help that?
Canceling it out. Don't think about it.
Canceling out distractions. asking
Eliminating the
questions,
problem.
Asking
Move
questions.
away from them.
Jill, what do you think about that?
I kind of disagree with Hogan because I feel like learning. I agree with him, but I also disagree with him because learning is based on how you perceive what people are saying, but it's also some of your control. Like if you pay attention to what you should be or your surroundings, and also you should probably use the time that you have to be more productive.
Faith, what about you?
In all fairness, though, sometimes either A, there is something that you can't really get rid of, some sort of distraction or something that you can't really just ignore if it's like a problem or whatever. Or, perceiving, like you said, perceiving what's around you and whatnot. That could be, like, if the teacher's talking and you don't really understand, but, it's like we're in the middle of talking, so you can't really stop to ask, so you're sitting there confused.
So what you're saying is some problems you cannot eliminate.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. I feel like you could fix this by having a conversation with your teacher to clarify.
But the thing is, if it's something like, if you didn't have time, like after school or anything, or after class, to talk to the teacher about the questions, or if it's something like, if you had a question in the middle and you needed that question answered to understand the rest of the material that they went over, but yet, you didn't want to stop it because you were in the middle of something and you would have gotten scolded or whatever for interrupting.
Austin, what do you think about this?
I would have to agree with Brennan because some distractions cannot be eliminated.
Like Hogan talking, for instance.
You have anything to say about that, Hogan?
The good strategies, the good effort, the help, and the positive attitude in those situations.
A positive attitude can really change the way you feel about everything. Because if you're sitting there and you just absolutely hate the class, you don't want to do anything, you don't want to work, you end up, you don't pay attention, you don't listen, you don't understand any material because you weren't paying attention simply because you don't care.
I agree, but I also feel like you could use good strategies like learning to care about your grades, and also if you have a better attitude, you're more likely to learn and take things in.
I disagree with that because lots of people have terrible attitudes, but they somehow get good grades and never speak once.
There also is a matter of listening as well. If they don't really care about the class and they have a negative attitude, but they have a positive enough attitude about their grades themselves, that kind of encourages them to listen so that they can at least get a good grade.
But also, if they don't listen, then they don't get the best grade. But if they read the text and do their homework, then they might understand it and just not do anything in class.
Okay, very good. Outside circle, what did our inside circle do well?
This is probably the worst thing I've ever had to listen to.
Okay, explain.
That's because I was gone for half of it.
Explain.
There were so many opposing people home the entire time.
Okay, how?
They never really
I said that.
Okay, do we have to agree when we have conversations?
No, but
And conversations
It
don't necessarily
does
need
help
to be organized.
True.
It's not something that you can stack on a shelf.
Okay, so what might have made this conversation not as productive as the first one?
They started arguing with each other.
Okay, so what's the difference between arguing and disagreeing in our, remember, our civil democratic conversation?
It basically turned into a debate about who
cared?
wasn't, who did not care.
That's why
who
it needs to
did
be
care.
organized.
Okay,
I thought we were gonna have a fight
okay, because
because Kenzie kind of flipped out on me.
Honey,
It kind of
that ain't flipping out.
okay, wait a minute. Okay, I do want to draw attention to the differences in the two conversations, because this is the one conversation out of all 6 that I had today that had this tone. Let's describe the tone that this conversation had.
They were like nagging at each other.
Aggressive.
Okay, nagging, aggressive. Haley, what
They were kind of challenging each other.
challenging? In what way? Those would all be somewhat good descriptors. What else could we say to describe the tone of this conversation?
More of an argument.
Can y'all stop typing? I'm trying to read.
There's a lot of laughing.
Unorganized.
Yeah, arguing and laughing together kind of make it a joke, right? Instead of taking it serious. Yeah. So instead of taking it seriously as a good, productive conversation, the purpose, the tone, and the perceived purpose of it, I think, got skewed in this last one. And I had some that were trying to bring it back to that, but some that tried to take it away from that intended purpose. And that matters. Seth?
Unprofessional.
Okay. Because this was, what kind of conversation was this supposed to be?
Political.
No.
Socratic.
Well, it's a Socratic discussion, but think language registers. What did we learn about the language registers?
Formal.
Okay, static, formal. Formal was a one-way, like a speech.
Yes.
Consultative
Consultative.
was when there's an imbalance of power.
Casual.
Casual is when there's the group, and then intimate. So this is casual, but where is it? In a classroom, right. Classroom conversations are generally the consultative, but yet they're right on that edge of casual, right? Because if I would have been in, like right now, we're definitely in a, right now we're definitely in a consultative register, because I am the one communicating in this classroom, teacher and student. You in the conversation, I wasn't involved in it, so it was just the group. Okay, so it's still in our classroom, so it's right on the edge between consultative and casual, which means you have formal academic language with a specific purpose. Okay, and we already talked about what the purpose of this was: getting you ready to be college and career readiness, those skills, building those professional skills that you'll need for the rest of your life. Okay, so what are some things that we need to keep in mind from this point forward in growing those skills? Seth?
When you're discussing, I think that you should use more. But how am I going to say this? I wouldn't say bigger words or like if you're not liking what someone's saying, say it more. Well, what am I trying to think of, Sona?
With, you mean more formal and academic language that you want to use? Vocabulary?
Bingo. It's the one.
Okay, so yes, keeping the tone and through word choice and vocabulary at a more formal academic choice. Yep. What else? No one should be typing right now. All right, what else will we want to keep in mind for improvement?
Listen better.
Listening better. Okay. Anything else?
talk more, agree more.
Well,
be
but
better.
I want to make sure that you understand conversations don't have to be agreeing. You can disagree and have the most wonderful, productive, deep conversation that helps everyone have a deeper collective understanding that broadens our perspective. That's what good, solid conversation and discussion is. So you don't have to agree with one another all the time, but intentionally disagreeing just to argue. It takes the conversation away, and we see the difference in these two conversations. Okay, so our first Socratic discussion has been a great learning experience for us, and this is one thing that I see so much growth in every single student that does this. So I'd like you to go back to your rubric. This time, highlight in green the skills that you know you used. You may have to, hopefully you'll have to change a bunch of yellows to green, but you may actually end up highlighting something that you didn't intend to use in practice that you then have to highlight in green. Okay, and then complete the reflection, which is questions 5, 6, and 7 of the very last page. Okay, questions? All right, thank you. Good job.
Brennan has taken control.
Okay, I
am the father.
do copy and download the transcript. Just so you know, I download this transcript, and I usually send the transcript out. Why is that going to be an issue?
Snorlax typing things that he's not supposed to.
Like what? This is my name.